Hello, welcome to Summit Session number 24. My name is Danielle, and I'm the Candidate and Marketing Director at Adventure Nannies. We are so happy to have you here with us today. The views expressed are those of the guest and do not necessarily represent the views of Adventure Nannies. Today, we're going to be talking about how to improve the experience of childcare at home for nannies, families, but most of all for children. And I'm so thrilled to share a bit more about our wonderful presenter, Annie Delaney. Annie Delaney is the co-founder and CEO of Rayz Kidz, an app that is an all-in-one tool for high-quality childcare and family management. She's a mom on a mission to improve the experience of childcare at home for parents, caregivers, and ultimately for children. She was so passionate about this that she actually left her 13-year career in corporate America, having worked for several years as a CPA at a public accounting firm, followed by a career at a large US beverage manufacturer in process improvement and the supply chain. After spending over a year designing and building the app, the Rayz Kidz app launched in May of 2021, and Annie and the team have continued to expand on the features that best serve the nanny community, their employers, and of course, the nanny kids. Annie resides just outside of Boston with her husband, 2 little girls, ages 4 and 2, and her 30-pound rescue pup, Mikey. I would encourage everyone to head to 𝐻𝐻𝑘𝐬𝐬𝐢𝐥𝐥 to learn more about all of the amazing work that Annie is doing. But without further ado, please join me in welcoming Annie.
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for the introduction, Danielle. I'm so happy you guys are here spending your Saturday talking about childcare tools. It shows that you are just very much dedicated to the profession and want to find ways to leverage tools that are out there to be able to make your life easier. And so I'm happy to talk with you about that, about my perspectives. Obviously, we have the app that I think is a wonderful tool to be able to do it. It's the whole reason I created it. But I'll add in some pieces about myself as a parent and my own experience, and hopefully that can help to kind of bring all the perspectives together. But I see some familiar faces and names, so I'm so happy to be here with you guys. Do you want me to go ahead and share my screen?
Yeah, awesome.
Okay.
Let's go ahead and get started. Thank you so much, Annie.
All right, so I have some slides, but please feel free to ask questions. I know Danielle will do a Q&A at the end. Can you see my Canva presentation? Okay, good. But let me know if there's anything that you have questions on as we go through. Feel free to make it interactive. So my goals for today's session is to be able to have you guys walk out of here and say, okay, I understand the communication needs of my family. What we'll go through is some of the changes in the ways that we've communicated. And it's become so natural for us to have an evolution in technology that I think it's hard to sometimes step back and think about, well, how does that change things for me in my job? And there's been so many advancements in every part of our world and many people's jobs. But there have been very few really in like the childcare space. There have been in like the matching space and all that, but in terms of how you actually do your job, there's been very few tools that have been provided to you. And so we'll talk about that as well as how that bumps up against the changes in the needs of your family. We'll talk about the ways that you can create some efficiencies in your work. You have a very difficult job, and as much time as you can save, that's the more time you can spend with the kids. And so it's super important to be able to find those efficiencies wherever you can. And learn how to utilize the available tools that are out there, such as the Rayz Kidz app, to be able to up your childcare game, to bring that professionalism that you want to, and that experience for the family, the experience for you, and of course for the kids. So those are our goals in what I would like to talk with you about today. But I wanted to ask if there's anyone who came in here with something that was a really burning question that they wanted to make sure they answer now or throughout. Please feel free to unmute yourself and ask it, or ask it in the chat. I think we have one thing in the chat, but I don't know if it's oh yeah, okay, it's just a note. But if there's nothing, we can go ahead and feel free to ask as you go. Okay, so, oops, sorry. Let me go back. So over the last decade, We might not even really think about how big of an impact this is for us, but do you remember the first time you got your smartphone? I do absolutely remember the first time I got my BlackBerry, and I thought it was super cool. And then I eventually got an iPhone, but it was maybe 10 years ago that I got an iPhone, I think. But it really, the percentage of adults who own a smartphone has gone up 2.4 times in the last 10 years. And if you think about all that that unlocks for us and how many tools are available on our phones and how that changes how we communicate, it's huge. So yes, from 35% to 85%. And I'm sure that the majority of people that you work with, and likely yourself, have smartphones. So we're all equipped with tons of tools at our fingertips. But how are we utilizing them? So the other piece that's changed, and that's somewhat related to the smartphone, is how many people are utilizing social media. And so that has gone up 3.4 times. So even more than it has for how many people own a smartphone, that many more people are on social media. And so there's a certain way that you're communicating on social media. There's a certain way that you are sharing information as well as consuming information. And you might not think that that relates to your job exactly, but it does have significant impacts in the way that you share information, the way that you're comfortable doing that, and the information that the parents that you're working with expect to be able to consume. Sorry, there we go. So what we just talked about was that technology has changed the way that we communicate. So it changes the way that we share information. So it changes how we go about sharing information. So what you used to provide in text messages or things, you probably put onto Instagram stories now. We used to post like tons of Facebook pictures in college when we went out, and now we'll post short snippets of things. We used to communicate on instant messenger, and now we communicate generally through like direct messaging and Instagram, maybe some texting. But certainly the way in which we share information has changed, and what we share has changed. Some people, of course, are more open about what they're sharing publicly. You can share it in sort of private groups within Instagram or within Facebook. But certainly we're sharing generally more information than we were before. And we're sharing it in short sort of clips of how of our personal lives or of things that are important to us, but it's generally a lot on social media, still some texting, but primarily social media. And how we're consuming information has changed. We consume so much information in a daily basis, and we do it so quickly. Like the speed of which I go through Instagram stories is just absurd. And if it doesn't catch my attention in a few seconds, I'm done. Like I just keep going. But it's become such that if I get a text, it seems like there's something wrong. Like someone really needs to talk to me. If I get a phone call, whew, there's like really a problem there. So it really has changed our expectations of the different mediums and how we go about interacting with each of them, which does have an impact on your job and how you communicate with your families. So it's just some examples of how technology has changed our world. So we talked about Instagram changing texting. Instead of group text messages sharing your vacation photos, you put them on Instagram stories and your friends are updated right away. And you can update a huge number of people by doing it. So it's somewhat taken away our need to text because we're filled in different ways. I'm not a huge WhatsApp user, but I've seen plenty of people use WhatsApp, and the way that they use voice calling is just very different than I've seen before, where they won't go and call someone. They'll leave a 5 to 10 minute voice message for them. And so that sort of interaction has changed, and it's more on demand. Like you don't have to get that person right then, but you can then, still say what you want to say, but you can listen to it when you want to listen to it. For Pinterest, of course, the sharing of ideas, you have such more of a wealth of ideas that you can take from. We'll talk a lot more about Pinterest as we go, because it really interacts with how we created the app. But it has created a much more significant world of ideas that are out there that you can consume. Slack, I don't know if many people use Slack. It's a little bit more of a corporate thing, but it has transformed the way that I use email. I now collaborate with probably 6 or so different teams of people between our app developers, marketing people, so our content developers, and we generally use Slack. Again, it's an on-demand way of being able to see short information that is shared. And it replaces the need to have a formal email. So some of the communication has become less formal. And then Amazon, though not to do with communication, I can't talk about how technology has changed our world without talking about Amazon. I mean, it's just transformed the way in which we shop. And the reason I bring it up is because of the efficiencies. And I'm so inspired by what Amazon has done in making it so user-friendly for the customer and so customer focused, that they made it so that between the hours of 11 and 12 p.m. at night, I can get so much done. The other day on Monday night, I was on Amazon at least for an hour. I ordered 2 nieces' birthday presents. I ordered my sister-in-law's shower present. I ordered some things for my kids' birthday parties. I mean, and restocked a bunch of things in the house, which would have taken me hours to do separately. So there are so many things out there that create efficiencies for us and change the dynamic in which we share and consume information. So technology has changed our world. Childcare seems to have been a little bit left out so far. There are some things on the matching part, like I mentioned, but very little on how you actually can do your job, how you're equipped to communicate with parents, how you're equipped to be able to create a learning environment for the kids. And the kids are at the forefront of childcare. And that's why the majority of the reason I created the app was for my own kids, because I was concerned about their development. And I wanted to make sure that our caregiver was equipped to be able to have the tools to give them the environment that I wanted them to have, which was a skill-based sort of learning, but really fun sort of activities. But there really haven't been advancements. And I was amazed when I looked around and when we transitioned to home care, how few resources there really are out there that are meant for the home environment. So just a few examples of how that sort of plays out and why that becomes an issue. So the current state, without the app, current state, our most common way of communicating in the childcare setting for majority of people who have home care is through texting. And texting, as we talked about earlier, there's a certain means for texting. There's a certain reason you would want to send a text. And to me, it becomes alarming to get a text. I'm like, oh, and it is so distracting because I think that there's an urgent issue that I need to get to. And for that to be routine information, it becomes a distraction that you don't need to have. So it's an issue because it makes it unroutine. Things about like pictures of the kids and what you're doing and any sort of updates on how potty training is going and things. Those are routine information that could be shared in a way that doesn't become an urgent matter. And you can separate what you have to know right now and what you can look at your leisure when you have some time between meetings or something, speaking mostly from the parent perspective there. So it becomes a distraction for you as well. If you have a parent, which I used to do, nag and say, because I'm nervous, hey, did you guys make it to the library? Because I've been thinking of it for the last hour and thinking maybe you've gotten a car crash because I didn't know, I didn't see any pictures or updates. I know you were going to the library. Many anxious parents are like that. I'm not sure if it's totally normal, but it becomes really distracting for you as well, because you're trying to devote your time to the kids. And if you're getting updates or questions from the parents and have to answer them, one, it's not the best thing for a parent to have to ask about it. It should be proactive in how you're sharing that information. But two, it becomes distracting for you when it's just routine things that are then sent sporadically. So it takes up more of your time than it needs to. So the second thing is our most common way of Sharing photos of the kids is also texting. And photos of the kids are the best. We'll talk more about photos, but every parent wants to see pictures of their kids. So they're not going to complain about getting a text with a picture of the kids, but it's not the best form in which to send it because it's hard to do anything with that. Sure, you get to see that information, but generally you're sending it to one of the parents. And so then that parent has to share it with the other parent. Maybe you have a group text going on, but you don't get to share it wider than that. And then you don't get to revisit it often. Like you have to go back through your text to be able to see it. And you don't get to share it more widely, like with the grandparents and things. And if you think of the ways in which social media has changed how we're sharing and consuming information, they expect to be able to see pictures of the kids. And we expect to be able to interact on those pictures, be able to like them, comment on them. But we generally don't want to do that on social media because it's so public. So what we've done with the app is create a way that it's private, but you still get that benefit of that sort of social media feel of the interaction with the photos. So one of the major reasons that we created the app was our ways of gathering activity ideas right now for what to do with the kids when they're at home. Instagram, Facebook, Pinterest, curriculums. There is so much that is out there. And there's wonderful ideas that are out there. I mean, many are sort of Pinterest worthy, which is part of the problem, where they just look, a lot of them look good, but it's actually really adult driven activities for it to look that good. And it's not about sort of the process and what the kids are getting out of it. What I really care about is making sure that my kids are learning from it. I really don't care what it looks like at the end of the day. But I want things that they are interested in and that will keep them engaged and keep them learning, and subtle ways to bring in things like numbers and letters and language development and fine motor. And, I really want to better understand what my kids are getting out of these activities than just the pretty Instagram reels that I'm seeing. So why is it an issue in the way that we're doing this right now? Well, there's way too many places to get information or get these activities. So before we created the app, I was doing this a lot, especially when COVID first hit. And it would take me hours to accumulate this information to say, okay, what do I think our caregiver should do with our kids this week? And I would try to come up with some sort of a theme and then put it all into a Excel document. And I forgot if I had them saved on my Instagram favorites, or if I took a screenshot from Facebook. I have it on my Pinterest board. Maybe it was the curriculum that I purchased, or did I Google it and then had to save a tab somewhere? There's just no way without the app of being able to put all of this together in a way that you can filter it. You can say, okay, I need an easy activity that has to do with dinosaurs. And then be able to see quickly, here's your materials list, here's your directions, versus reading through someone's life story before you can actually get into what the activity is about. So it's super inefficient for you to do this. Many caregivers who have a ton of experience probably have things in their back pocket, but you still have to think about them. It's still not right at your fingertips to be able to go and use that information, where you can take some of these activities and favorite them and know this is exactly the place I go to get them. So there's our last problem that we'll go through before we talk about solutions here is places that schedules exist. So as I now have a almost 5-year-old and an almost 3-year-old, and as our 4-year-old started to get into things like soccer and swimming and gymnastics, I found that everything was in my head. And that's not a wonderful place for all this to live. There's too much in there that I have to remember that I'm not going to remember to share. And I'm sure you have some of these parents where you have to ask them several times about what is going on, what the schedule is. You have to write it out separately. Maybe there's a calendar that is on a board. Maybe they have a calendar that you're not invited to. Maybe there is a group calendar, but it still isn't exactly what you need, or it's not being updated. So that becomes a problem for you as a professional trying to organize this and make sure the kids get to where they need to be on time. And you don't want to nag and have to ask the parents all the time what's going on. So that, if you're missing information, you have to ask, you lack clarity, you don't feel equipped to be able to do your job very well. And that can create some tension. So that is sort of setting the stage for where we are in technology and some of the problems that we haven't yet solved in the childcare space. But it also tees into what the solution is, which is the app that we created. And all of those reasons that I just stated are the reasons I created it, because I knew really I wanted solutions for myself as a parent. I wanted our caregiver to be able to have better tools to be able to work off of. It seemed unfair that there was very little that I'm providing as an employer to be able to make her do her job well. Like when I had a corporate job before I left, I would have 1,000 tools. I had, Excel, Teams, project management software, all sorts of SAP, like all sorts of things to help me do my job. But caregivers don't have really any tools provided to them to do their jobs. But most of all, I did it for my kids because I really care about their growth and development and knew that we needed to be able to have some better tools to do that. So we're going to break this down into a few sections of how we talk about each of the things that we just went through. So the communication part and the way in which we've been texting back and forth, and that's the primary means of communication right now. Well, why is daily communication important? Well, it's a critical part of being a professional. You need to have reliable, consistent communication. Your employers expect it. If they're not saying it, they want it. I know you want to be able to deliver it, but you probably don't always know the best way to do that because texting seems somewhat intrusive. The logs, sure, maybe you could write it down, but at the end of the day, it's generally not utilized as much. So it's not as wonderful of an experience as being able to see it when you want to see it and have that information on demand. Again, like we're used to being able to have information on demand. So what we have is a means to be able to share events throughout the day. And so you can share things, whatever is really important. You can share pictures of the kids. Generally, what I like to see is the events of the day. So what they've done, especially any pictures that they have, because you always love to see pictures and like fun accomplishments and things. So just in this one picture, this one was heartwarming for me because my 4-year-old Addie, who's on here, she was starting to write. And so she was writing and drawing pictures in this sort of storybook that was based on one of the activities on the app. And she really made it her own and she loved it. And I got to see it when I got home. But it was so heartwarming to be able to see that she was really trying so hard to come up with an awesome story. And so those are the accomplishments. Like when Kinsley, our 2-year-old, jumped into the foam pit at gymnastics, and she had been so nervous to do that every other time, but she finally jumped in on her own. Seeing that video of it was the best. So seeing any sort of accomplishments and things, but just even generally what they're doing during the day is wonderful, whether there's a picture associated with it or not. I like to see what they've eaten during the day to know how much they've eaten. I love to see naps because that helps me understand what is going to happen after I get home. And so any handoff items, like the last time they went to the bathroom, is helpful for me to know because they don't always tell the truth about the last time they went to the bathroom, especially if we're about to leave the house to do something else. So those are things that I like to see, and it just is a nice way of keeping me in the loop. And I feel like part of their day, even though I'm not with them. So those are the things that I would absolutely share. But of course, you want to align with your employers on what they would like to see. If they don't care about any bathroom trips, especially if they're older, don't log them. Don't spend time doing that. But all these categories are there, and there's expanded ones for babies as well. So the things to, is that right? Okay. The things that I wouldn't share as part of your daily communication, I think you probably all understand this enough, but there are certain things to talk about in person and really in maybe special sit-down meetings. that don't need to be part of the daily communication, like significant behavioral issues, especially repeat behavioral issues, that things that are becoming a problem, especially if they're, the family's not backing you up on it, or there's something more that you need to go into. Of course, their sensitive information that's probably not the way that a parent would like to consume that. Any sort of employment challenges, if they've been coming home late and it's repeated and it's now becoming an issue, you got paid late that week, whatever it is, those are things to talk about in person. So photos, we already talked a little bit about photos, but what we have here is an album. And all the other apps that are out there, I'm so confused as to why the photos are hidden. It seems like it takes a lot to get to the photos, but the photos are what the parents want to see. So we created a tab within here that is just a photo album, and it's all the photos that you've added either through a daily event, or you can add it directly through this photos tab. And it's a way of being able to see a collection of them, of all that the kids have done, or anything that you've added. And you can assign, or you can invite people by child. So we have my parents invited to it, my in-laws are invited to it, my sisters, our past caregivers. And so it's a really fun way of being able to interact with each other and be able to share it, again, on demand. When someone wants to be able to see it, they can go in to do that. And we can also enjoy the experience of what people are commenting, especially funny things that the kids are doing. It's nice to be able to have my mother-in-law comment on it, my mom comment on it, and be able to enjoy these experiences together in a forum that makes sense. And it's accessible. You can go back to it. You can download them if you want. And so it keeps them nice and organized and accessible to everyone. So again, things that you want to share. Really, there's little that you don't want to share. Photos, I'll take as many photos as I can throughout a day. Those are not ever sort of a distraction. So cute photos, accomplishments that they've done, whether it's them taking a picture of them at the park the first time that they made a friend there, and that's something that you guys have been working on for socialization for kindergarten prep. Or whatever it may be, whether it's, we had a note from preschool that Addie needed to work on some of her numbers. And so I would get pictures of her working on some of her numbers and doing some fun number activities. And so those are things that I like to see for accomplishments. And activities that you're doing with the kids, any sort of fun things that show how great of a time the kids are having when they're not with the parents, makes them feel really happy about their childcare, makes them feel good about their decisions of what they've made and know that they're in good hands. And then they can put their phone down and go back and focus on what they have to at work. So things that you wouldn't want to share, again, there's not much, but maybe like if there's a rash that you're concerned about, maybe text that or mention it to the parents when they get home. But really just know that it's being shared with whoever they've invited to the account. But pretty much every picture, everyone's going to want to see. So activities, again, one of my favorite parts of the app is the activities. So the whole purpose in having these activities here is to be able to help you create that learning environment at home for the growth and development of the children. So one of your responsibilities as a professional caregiver is to help to grow and develop the children. And oftentimes it's just hard to do, especially in a mixed age group. It's really hard to do. And I think some people just put it to the side, or other people spend hours preparing each week to be able to make that happen. And if you're not doing it, we want you to be doing it. And if you are spending 2 hours prepping a week, and usually unpaid time, we want to be able to reduce that for you and make it easier for you to facilitate these things and not a Herculean effort every time that you come in each week prepared with what you want to do. So what we do is we provide activities. So we have 6 new activities that we publish each week, and they're all theme-based, and they have a variety of sort of skill base to them. And we try to make sure that that's appropriate so that you can have the right balance for what works for you. But we also note any sort of modifications that we can to make it harder for older children and make it easier for younger children. And you can do that within the same activity. It doesn't have to be the same thing each time. You can change it for the 2-year-old for what you would be doing that at that same time with the 4 or 5-year-old. And then there's a repository of them that collects. So I have 400 something activities that are there. And so this is where I said we were talking about Pinterest. It's like what we've tried to make it, and I think we've effectively done it, is to combine a sort of Pinterest type feel with a curriculum. So it's the sort of flexibility of Pinterest with the education base of a curriculum, where on Pinterest, you don't exactly know what you're going to get. They might not be really skill-based activities, but it's wonderful to have the visual part of it, the accessibility of it, the flexibility of it. And with a curriculum, curriculums are wonderful for many things in the growth and development of a child. But it's sometimes generally on a PDF, like a static document, hard to go back to utilize that information. So we want to make it really accessible, but have the education base of what you really need to be bringing into the home and what the parents really want and what the children need. So with our activities, my suggestions for the sort of do's and don'ts with these is to look at them in advance. They're right in your pocket. You can look at them. We have this week's out there each week, and we always have next week available too, so you can see what's there. And we try to make it minimal prep, but there's very few things that you don't have to even think about at all. Just good to know what's there, what might be of interest to your kids, as well as going through, use the filter and go through past activities, past themes, and see what might be of interest to your children or what's appropriate right now. If it's going to be a really nice week, go to some of those outdoor activities and make sure you have those water balloons and the chalk there. So the whole point of reviewing them in advance is to know what's there and make sure you have the materials. Try to use as simple materials as we can, but it doesn't mean that there's nothing required. There are some things that are required for it. But what I absolutely recommend that you do is that you modify them. So you take this as a jumping off point. It's an inspiration for you to be able to bring it to your home, but make it your own. Make it what you want it to be. Make it what you know your kids are going to be engaged with. And with that, to follow the child's lead. If they are really not into, a certain sort of, we have, I think this week is letters. If they're not into letters, okay, and nothing is striking their fancy and they're really into dinosaurs, go to the dinosaur week and do those ones. Or figure out a way that you can incorporate a dinosaur within that letter activity. Instead of using an octopus, use a dinosaur. So there's fun ways in which you can make it your own. So make sure you follow the child's lead, and because that's going to be the way that they learn best, is when they're doing things that they're actually interested in. And absolutely tell the parents, take credit for what you're doing and make sure that they know the skills that the child is developing from it. One thing that was important to me was we use plain English in how we talk about the skills. So many activities and curriculums use like very technical language. And I, as a child educator, ECE person, I don't really understand all of those. I'm sure if I spent enough time, I could think, okay, I now understand what this means. But what does fine motor actually mean? The ability to use the small muscles in your fingers. And so that is good for me to understand, okay, they're developing fine motor here, they're developing gross motor here. And for you to be able to communicate that and translate it for the parents helps the parents feel the value that you're providing. It makes it look as though you are an expert. You are the professional who cares so much about the child's development that you're really cognizant about it. And you're proving that you understand those concepts and how you can deliver it to the child. They're just going to have more trust in you. And they're going to no longer push that sort of PDF curriculum that they purchased. They're going to then say, okay, I get it. Go ahead and take the lead. The things to not do is to assume that you have to do all the activities that are there. So we have 6 new ones that we come up with each week. And if it's not, doesn't strike you as something you want to do, don't do those ones, do other ones. Also, don't feel like you have to do an activity every day or 2 activities every day. It depends on what your schedule is and what the kids are interested in. You want to be in a state of flow. And if they're in a state of flow, don't interrupt that and force them to do an activity. Those are there to be able to help you when you need them, but don't force it on them. So the last one we'll go through is schedules. So in keeping track of a schedule, it really, as a professional, you want to be organized. And so you want to know what's going on. You want to be informed. You want to feel prepared to be able to do your job. And kids, these really have a lot of busy schedules and places that they have to go. And for you to be able to prepare how you want your day to go, you have to know what's already out there. So I think every household is probably going to be pretty different in terms of what their schedules look like, as well as how they manage them. I've spoken with many nannies who they book all the activities for the kids, like all the sort of extracurriculars. So if there's gymnastics, they're coordinating that. If there's swimming, whatever it is. I personally do all of that myself and I communicate it out. So you want to review with the parents what information they want to have included and who's responsible for managing it. It probably is fairly clear who's responsible for managing it, but what you want to make sure that you're putting in here is who's managing adding it to the calendar. Even if they are the ones who are scheduling it, who's actually adding it to the calendar. If they want you to do that, sure, just send you the information and you can make sure recurring events are set up so that you're prepared for that and you don't have to go back and reference their text messages all the time. Make it as easy as you can on them, but start to create this as sort of your vault of truth and that everyone's going to the same place to make sure that information is up to date. And the only things that you don't want to do is to default using other methods. So trying something new can be hard, and getting out of that routine of maybe the parents texting things can be hard. You want to make sure that as you're using this and you're committing to using it, that when someone asks about what's going on in the schedule, you're pointing them to the same place so that you change your habits. I've had to do it with my own husband, where he asks what we have going on in a weekend, or he asks what the kids' gymnastics schedule is. I say, go to the app. It's all in the app, because I no longer want to be the center of information. I want the app to do that. And so acknowledging that there's a change in habits is important when you're moving to something new. So I went through all that pretty quickly, but those are the things that I wanted to make sure that we went through for the available tools that are out there and how that can create such efficiencies for you to be able to prepare for your week, to be able to be equipped with the knowledge of what you need to do your job, both from an activity standpoint, from a schedule standpoint, to be able to professionally communicate that information. And it will make you look really, really good when you're doing it. I'm telling you, as a parent, I created this. There's no parent who's not going to want to see the information of their kids, who doesn't want a more streamlined way of being able to see that and be able to experience the photos of their kids and share it with their extended family and friends. So it's only going to make you look good to be able to utilize these tools and make your life easier while you're doing it. And we're happy to say that we have a code for you too. So we love Adventure Nannies. Of course, everybody who's on here does. And so we absolutely want to make sure that we equip you guys with the tools that you need. And so we'll start you off with your first month free. And so if you just put in the code Adventure 2022, you'll get your first month free. You can download it on the App Store or Google Play. It will bill you at $20 a month after that. So what we would love to do is make sure the family is set up with the payment after that. So you can, of course, just send this information along to your family and have that be included, or you get reimbursed for it. But essentially, we want it to be a tool that is employer provided. So as long as either you or the family is paying for it, whoever is associated with the child, if there's one person who's paid, then everyone gets the premium access. You can download it for free and of course try it out as well. There are some, like the event log and some photo storage and some activities are available for free. But if you want the scheduling, you want all the activities, you want tons of photo storage so you can continue to share, You want the in-app chat, you want safety tips. Those are all part of the premium features, which we are super happy to give you the first month free.
Annie, this has been so incredible. Thank you so much for sharing all of this. I personally downloaded the app a couple of weeks ago and have been using it. And now I've got both of my sisters interested. And I think it's just such an incredible tool for everybody that is working or raising children in any way. And I love the way that you kind of touch on some of the emotional labor that goes into being the holder of all of the information when it comes to navigating multiple different schedules and lots of dynamic events and situations. And I love the idea of having a centralized hub for all of this information to live so that everyone can collectively maintain a clear understanding of what's happening, what the expectations are, without it being this sort of unconscious burden that's placed on one individual in the group. And I just really feel like this is such an extraordinary resource, and I'm really grateful for the special code to give everyone a month free. I think everyone's going to kind of fall in love with it because I really, really love it.
Oh, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Of course. So we do have a question. So one of the questions that I got actually through social media was, how would we, if you were a care provider, how would you suggest care providers discussing utilizing the app with their employers? This is something that ultimately we would probably want to really kind of campaign to get the employers on board and get them excited about it. But do you have any tips for folks that have, watched this amazing presentation and are now interested in joining, but also kind of curious how to get the hiring parents involved?
Yeah, it's a great question. And as much as I know that parents will love it when they're on it, it's still something new and something that they probably don't know about. And not everyone acknowledges that there are issues right now, that things could be better. And I don't think you have to go through all of those issues and acknowledge them. But I think what you can say as a professional is to say, hey, I was on this Adventure Nannies webinar and I saw information about this really cool app, and I think it can really help us me be able to share this information. You'd be able to experience it a lot better. I can send you lots of photos. We can invite the extended family to it. You can see what the kids are doing throughout the day. And so it's a way for me to be able to do that instead of texting. It can reduce the amount of time that we have to spend doing handoffs. And I think it's just a really streamlined way. And a lot of other people are starting to utilize it and finding how many benefits they get. They also have a resource of activities that I can do with the kids, which I know is really important to you as a parent to be able to continue to grow and develop them. And you can, of course, access them whenever you'd like or see sort of the things that we're doing. But for less than what it costs for an hour of childcare, we can get this for every month. And I'd love to start us off by using a free code. Just try it, we'll experience it and see how we like it. And you as the nanny is probably going to be the primary driver of that. So you can say, hey, I'll set us up. I can set the kids up. I can invite you to it. We really made sure that we could make it nanny driven, but family owned is sort of the concept.
I love that. That's so helpful to kind of have that sort of restructuring and sort of a way to really approach that conversation. And another thing that you said, Annie, that I really love is how important and how helpful it would be to have this app in use in your job as a care provider, knowing that historically and currently, a care provider's work is often undervalued or misunderstood, or in a lot of ways, because we're working in private homes, there are a lot of aspects of unseen labor, things that I think that the hiring family would want to see and would want to know about, so that there's an opportunity to acknowledge it and to encourage the continuation of it. But I think it's really difficult to kind of quantify that or even qualify that. We always encourage nannies and newborn care specialists and private educators to do weekly check-ins with the hiring family just to kind of stay on the same base. But how streamlined would it be to have a weekly check-in if you've had a daily ongoing digest of what's been happening with the children's care and any sort of things that are happening with their schedules or pictures and activities. And I think there's just a certain amount of like mental and emotional labor that is taken off of many people's plates by utilizing a tool like this. So I really love that idea. And I also think about, coming from the sort of care provider advocacy perspective, which I just kind of tend to come from. I think it's really cool to think about the ways that having this sort of digest would really impact, end of year reviews, or really having discussions about your performance as a care provider. You have this really clear digest of, look at, these are the things that I'm working on each day. These are the really sort of important ways that I'm impacting your children. And also, now we have really clear idea of what pathways we want to change or head towards, because we have a really clear idea of where we've been. So I love this app so much. I really appreciate you taking the time to sit here with us on a beautiful weekend and share this. Can you let us know where folks can head to find out more about Rayz Kidz?
Yes. So 𝐻𝑘ids.com is our website. So we have tons of information there and additional resources for nannies, which we've done a ton of chats. You can go to, I'm changing around our resources page right now, and soon they're all linked, but they do link to our Facebook page, where we've done a ton of chats about year-end reviews and communication with families and ways to utilize these activities. So feel free to join our Facebook group, which is Rayz Kidz Childcare Professionals. You're all welcome there. And then, of course, we have our website, and then our Instagram and Facebook. We always post, each week we post some fun activity reels, so get you, again, inspired to do something with the kids and make it really easy to understand what to do. So those are all the places to find us. And of course, feel free to email me directly if you have any questions, Annie.Delaney@RayzKidz.com.
Amazing. Thank you so much again, Annie. I just cannot tell you how much I appreciate your time and the work that you've invested in this industry and supporting care providers and parents and families in general, and particularly children, navigating the growing up process and having all of these really incredible resources, and not only just resources, but true inspiration. That's one of the things I really love about the app and about your social media presence, is there's such a deep level of inspiration in terms of activities and creative approaches to things that are difficult to just come up with in the moment when you're managing so many different aspects of childcare. So I really appreciate you taking the time to share this with us. Thank you so much, Annie.
Thank you all. I so appreciate you being here, and honored to be part of the many wonderful people who have been on these summit series. So thank you very much for inviting me.
Oh gosh, it is absolutely our honor. So we are just gonna probably wrap up a little early unless anybody has any questions. I'm not seeing any additional questions in the chat, but lots of thumbs ups. I really appreciate you, Annie. This has just been so incredibly helpful. So for more information about this incredible session, please do check out Rayz Kidz on social media and at 𝐻𝑘ids.com. Our next summit session is actually going to be in the fall, because we're taking a little bit of a summer sabbatical. But we look forward to seeing you online in the interim. You can find us by searching Adventure Nannies on Facebook and Instagram, and at adventurenannies.com, of course. So thank you all so much for joining us here. And thank you to the folks that are watching the recording later. I hope that you all have such a wonderful summer, and I look forward to touching base with you soon. Thank you.
Thanks.